If we have a big made hand, like a set or better, we want to build the pot because it's our goal to get all in. Unless something super sick happens, like the board runner's a four flush where you flopped a set, like that sucks. Or like, you flopped a flush draw and you turned a flush, but then a fourth card of that suit comes in and you have like the five high flush because you have like 4 5 suited. Sometimes building the pot doesn't work out, but generally it's our goal to get it big so we can get all in if we have a good hand. If our opponent is in a calling mood, we only have 4 chances to build the pot: pre-flop, flop, turn, and river. If our opponent is willing to raise us, yeah, we can get all in on any street since our bets followed by the raise allows us to put in a third bet, which, looking at the earlier matrix, is huge relative to the pot size. I think it'd be like 45 times bigger or something. Now, that being said, most of the time both players won't have a huge hand, so it won't go bet, raise, re-raise. So we must build the pot when we get the chance and not miss any opportunities. The worst thing in poker is missing the chance to put out a bet and get called when we would have had the best hand. So if you've got the goods, get that money in there. If the opponent folds to our flop bet when we have a set, oh well, if he wasn't going to call a bet on the flop, he probably wouldn't have called a bet if we'd waited till the turn to do it. Just if you got a big hand, assume your opponent has at least a decent hand and play accordingly. Try to get paid because you don't get big hands very often, so you don't want to miss out on value when you do get them. With marginal hands, on the other hand, we aren't really trying to get all in. We're often trying to just get 1 or 2 bets in because betting, firing all 3 streets, narrows our opponent's range so that they would only have a few strong hands left. Throwing in a check on 1 street, however, keeps our opponent's range of hands wider and therefore weaker because we don't allow him the chance to fold out the weaker part of his range. If we have, say, king queen and raise pre-flop in position, we got called by like the blind, and we hit a queen on a queen 7-2 board with no draws, so our opponent cannot have a draw. We bet the flop and we get called. Well, our opponent probably has, either a 7, a queen, or a pocket pair in between there. Now, if we bet on the turn when our opponent checks to us, he's probably going to fold all the 1 pair hands that we have beat. All those pocket pairs, a weaker queen. The only pair he's going to call us with is probably ace queen. And if they have a set and raise us, we're going to feel stupid for not checking our top pair, top kicker, because our hand can't play 3 bets. We can only play 2. And once we bet and they raise, they're calling us out for that third bet. And what do? We have to fold because we've overplayed our top pair. And, it just sucks to have to throw away a hand. Now, if we check instead of betting the turn, our opponent doesn't have the opportunity to fold those 8s, 9s, 10s, queen X type of hands that he called the flop with just to see what we do on the turn. When we check behind, we force him to play those hands on the river. We can now bet the river instead of the turn if he checks to us and our hand looks weaker because we checked and showed weakness, and he might think we're making a desperation bluff. Or he might make a bluff himself because he didn't call us on the flop with much because he just wanted to see what we did on the turn, and when we checked the turn, he assumed we're weak, so he tried to steal a pot, and now we can snap off his bluff with top pair. And we've played the appropriate 2 streets with our mediocre but not great hand. The idea of pot control really boils down to your opponent type. Some players will call 3 streets with bottom pair, and against them we should build a pot with top pair. Others respect that bet line, and to get the right value for our hands, we've got to mix in a check here and there. Many hands are only good for 2 streets of value anyway, and by checking back the turn, we guarantee that the pot will only be 2 bets. Either they bet and we call the river, that's the second bet, or if they check again, we can bet and put in that second bet. And if they raise, well, I guess we didn't really accomplish our mission, but if they raise, they probably got something pretty good and we can fold, not worrying about our 1 pair maybe being the best hand. Whereas if we bet the turn and our opponent raises, we've opened up the door for them to make it that third bet. And if we do call, we're potentially facing a fourth bet if they decide to bet the river again. And that's just not what we want when we just have like a mediocre hand. As the Matrix showed earlier before, pot control can be exercised on any street. Maybe instead of betting the flop, checking the turn, and betting the river, we just want to check the flop and then bet the turn, bet the river, because our opponent will assume we have nothing because we checked the flop. You know, there are just so many ways to get the pot size where we want it to be. And with practice and experience, you'll learn which combos of betting, raising, checking work best against which opponents with different hand values. But your edge will come that if you plan your line for the appropriate pot size when the flop comes down, our opponent, on the other hand, will not be so smart as to plan the hand, and we'll get a huge advantage because we know what's going on, we're following the big picture, and they're just taking it one street at a time, not really being aware of the potential threat of a huge pot brewing, even though they're just calling their bets. They don't know the potential of what could happen, but we do. So just always be aware. If we want to ensure a pot stays small, be passive. Betting opens up the door to getting raised. Checking and calling, on the other hand, allows us to limit the rate at which our opponent can build the pot. If you're out of position and you have like a good but not great hand, like one that could handle 3 streets but no more, just check and call down your opponent's bets. Let him build the pot for you, but don't help him make it bigger than you want. Because when you bet, you open the door to being raised, and you basically add another street to the matrix for them to build a pot. And you just don't add the extra streets if you don't want a big pot. If you want a big pot, sure, bet and get it raised so you can build a huge pot. But you don't want to be doing that if you just have a mediocre hand. Remember, it takes 2 players to get all in. Only play along when you've got the best of it. Sorry about that. A little delay there. I got distracted. My phone was beeping.